On this Encore episode of the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey, Dan Ferreira joins the team to talk about custom builds and the practicality of them in SLO County. And those can be an add-on that are a revenue generator as well. ADUs are a great way to add value to your property and make your home or property actually make you money. California Dream might not be as expensive as you think. Here's your host, James Bueno.
Welcome to another SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast. As always, we have Mr. Hal Sweasey with us.
Good morning, James.
We have JT, Mr. John Turner.
James, great to be here.
And I'm excited for today, Hal, because we have a special guest. Do you want to introduce who we got?
Sure, yeah. I've got a great contractor, business owner, Dan Ferreira of Ferreira Construction. We've worked together for years. He helped us on a building that I own, so I know firsthand about the service, and he's got a wealth of knowledge. So I'm just going to introduce Dan. And Dan, hey, why don't you tell our listeners that may not be aware or familiar with you, how long you've been doing this, what you guys focus on. Just give us a little bit of background if you don't mind.
Sure. Thanks, Hal. Yeah, we've been here since graduating Cal Poly 2006. So I'm part of that class and raised my kids here, started a business right in 2008, right in the worst time ever. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it seems like a lot of good things get started in the worst times. So we started building homes, remodeling homes. And as things came back online, we added a window and door company, some manufacturing. And then we co-founded an architecture and engineering company. So our dream has always been to offer a design build solution so that you've got a whole team together. So we've been at it 12 years, and we estimate, even though we're not really sure, that we put up about 100 custom homes around the county, usually about 10 or 12 a year, and then add in some miscellaneous commercial restaurant type of stuff. So we kind of touch it all. And really what we say is if our team can do it well, let's do it. So we don't really draw too many hard lines on types of projects.
I notice you guys are a great resource for someone like me that has a client that wants to build or considering it. And it's just like you can answer all the questions versus going to a lot of different places. How did you compile that kind of team?
Yeah. Being around the industry for some time, even before launching a business, one of the biggest frustrations is that we're so siloed between the architecture, engineering, the building, the different subcontractors. There's just so much to know. And so the industry's response of the last few decades is to really segregate and break everything up. And the downside is that the consumer or the strategic partner like yourself doesn't have access to everything. So we've made it our mission to put as many people in one house as possible with our companies, but also to build as many strategic relationships where we can talk about everything that is involved in the process. Even though there's 20 different consultants, we can at least represent them up front well, so that you don't have to know a soils engineer or a civil engineer. You just need to know us. We'll bring all that forward. So we just know it's so critical to making decisions that we make it a point to put that in front.
Nice. One-stop shop.
Can I build a house for less than I can buy one for?
I can.
I can't.
Yeah.
Can you, John?
Yeah,
well, we've proven you can.
I'm sure you can. Yeah.
And just ask my wife. I'll finish it one day.
Yeah, right.
I guess the answer is always it depends. And so the answer is yes, you can, but you need the right team and the right lot and the right process. And if you put those things together, then you can do amazing things and you can come out ahead. And one of the things we were reflecting on the other day, over the last 10 years, we can't name one client we've built for that didn't move in with equity. So to prove your point, if it's done well and it's done strategically well with consideration to budget, to all the other items on a person's list, you can accomplish it. You just got to get it all up front. That's kind of the takeaway today.
You know, I was kind of one of the ones that thought that this would be a good question because I hear this a lot, and when we're trying to help people that want to buy land and build a house, my perception was, and it's probably relatively true industry-wide, is, boy, by the time you buy that and you get your fees done and everything, you're going to be into it for probably a lot more than you could have bought a home for. Do you see that often? Or?
It is common, and when you do look around at the custom homes being built, they are large, and many of them are done. They're done because they want what they want. And so you kind of need to put that in one category and come back and say, let's say you want to build 2,500 feet and live in the city. You can do that. Now, you would know how more than me, the land to do that on is not as plentiful as it used to be, the entitled city lots. So when you find one, you got to jump on it because a lot of the land you see for sale is country property and it's luxury property and whatnot. Right. So we did a couple right off of Broad up there on the hill.
Yeah.
They were all in for under $1 million. They moved in with $200,000 of equity. probably 18 months from close of escrow on dirt to move in, but that's entitled land with utilities. And those are straightforward, and the math works.
It's easier, right? Or less homework for you.
Yeah,
right?
no planning approvals, straight into building, just like a real estate deal, they're just straightforward bread and butter. And when we find them, you jump on them, they work really well.
Yeah, because when I'm dealing with clients, when they talk about building or even a remodel, I say, oh, okay, so it was way cheaper and faster than you thought, which everybody laughs because they never seem to be the case. But I'm sure that happens often. But you've got a system that maybe minimizes that, it sounds like.
It's cheaper and fast. You were, being sarcastic than what they thought. It all comes down to expectations. And the expectations are set by how good did the team do up front setting those. How good was the feasibility study? Did we see that new sewer line that's going to cost you $10,000? Did we identify that up front? Was it part of the budget, or did it sting you late? And so the better we set expectations, the better we estimate up front, the better the process goes. I mean, people ask all the time, what do things cost? And we'll give a rough order measurement like a square foot, but you really need a detailed estimate that has been prepared for your specific application to get those right expectations. You can't go off of the general data and expect to be on target.
So for many people, building their dream house is not only a dream, it's a bucket list thing. It's romantic, especially if you don't get divorced, right? So, so
that's a nervous laugh right there.
Sorry, John.
No, I built a house a few years ago, and I'm still happily married. Well, I'm still married.
All right.
Yeah.
So I find this lot that I'm all over the lot. I want this lot. It's a great lot, and so I call my favorite real estate agent, Hal Sweasey. I go, Hal, I want to buy this lot, but I don't know what to do next.
Right.
What do I do next?
Yeah. What I would say is, obviously get a hold of someone like us. You're going to need a designer, but you don't need a designer day one. You're going to need what you need is a team that can identify the feasibility. So typically when our team gets brought in on your situation, you're staring at that lot, maybe you've made offers with Hal, maybe you're in your due diligence period. We get brought in, and the first thing we go is, what are your expectations? And you'll say, well, I bought the lot for $500,000 and I've got a $800,000 build budget, and I want to build X, Y, and Z. And so we start backing that up, and we say, okay, we build a program real quick with our feasibility estimate that backs you into the reality if that's possible. We go, what's the site going to take? What are the utilities going to take? And we start putting numbers on things. And the actual cost of your vertical house, that's the easiest part. If you give me a flat lot anywhere in the country, I can tell you what the vertical house costs. It's all the other stuff that takes a little bit of homework to figure out. That's what our team does. If you can get all that straight up front, then it's pretty smooth sailing. So I would say anybody who's in love with a lot, the average person we talk to who actually has a budget, they're not an open budget person, they might have to look at 2 or 3 lots before we find one that actually where the math works and everything works well. So do the homework, get the team involved.
So besides price, what makes a lot the one? What makes a lot a great lot versus a bad lot? Right.
Okay. So I'll just go through all the cost impacts. Slope. We have lots in town that are 35-foot, incline upsloper. So, like I said, the cost to go vertical once you've got that foundation, it's pretty similar. But are you going to spend $100,000 extra dollars in the dirt? We call it. Are you going to spend, maybe it's a steep downsloper and the sewer's up in the street. Now we got to pump everything up. Maybe PG&E's got to put in 300 feet of underground and a transformer to get out to your country property. So we're looking at utility access, power, water. Do we have to drill a well? How deep is it going to be? What's a will serve letter cost from that water jurisdiction? Can you get one? So we're really looking at, our whole checklist is utilities, which would be power, water, sewer, whatever that looks like, and gas. Then we turn around and we look at, are there any environmental pieces? There's lots that are technically buildable in Los Osos, but there's a manzanita, and on the manzanita is a snail, and the snail comes out once a year when it rains, and if that, that's a deal killer. There's so botanical, biological, environmental. There's a blue line creek. There's a drainage. What's that going to mean? So we again, you don't have time to go consult 30 people, but there's a pretty good body of knowledge sitting in our team we can put forward. So utilities, environmental, and then we're looking at soil conditions and other red flags and things like that.
So the variability in cost is mostly in the site.
Mostly in the site.
Yeah, and even with all the stuff we read about lumber and everything going up and down and all that stuff. So if somebody's going to build a 2,500 square foot house on a flat lot, I mean, okay, I'm going to put you on the price per square foot to do something like that
Yeah.
realtors love to throw around because we don't know anything.
And the way we use price per square foot, which is a rough order of measurement, a ROM, which is the worst way but the best way to talk about it quick, is we say, hey, that 2,500 foot single story home with sort of like 9 foot ceilings, got, nice things but not over the top, $250 a foot is plenty to build the home, but how much else is waiting for you
Right.
around that site? So we can confidently say price per square foot on the structure, 250, 300's tons, you're good. But then someone who builds a home, they say, well, I was 400 a foot. Well, you had to climb a mountain, you had to put in a 1/4 mile driveway. So you have to separate that stuff off to even kind of get good data.
Right.
But I would tell anybody, $250 a foot on your structure is a reasonable expectation. And then we gotta look at the rest of the factors on top.
But then you have design and
Yep.
engineering and all the other stuff and the soils people and all that stuff, all
So-
those other things.
Yep.
That doesn't go into that 250.
It does not. So what we do is our one-page initial feasibility budget, we do soft costs, architecture, engineering, consultants, fees to the jurisdictions, impact fees, water impact fees, school fees. We put it all on there, and then we do the vertical construction, the easy part, and then we look at the site, utilities, access, all those sort of things. And so when you look at all those pieces, then you get the whole enchilada, and then you decide whether it's going to be a romantic experience or not.
John. So other quick questions. So can we shift to like ADUs, right? So it's much easier to put a guest house, granny house, additional dwelling unit, all those things, we call those things. So cities are different, counties are different. Is it just kind of give us the general atmosphere of what that's like?
If we rewind the tape before we had the term ADU, it was a really disconjuncted situation. But as soon as the ADU was brought in, that's the first example of statewide zoning, uniform zoning, which is a really hot topic. Should the state be imposing statewide things or should it not? Most people say no, but gosh, does it make life easy? And it really helps clarify a lot. So the ADU is a great one because it is a statewide zoning. It is an exception to density. It is an exception to parking. The state basically told all the cities and counties, you cannot impose all these crazy nuanced regulations that stop people from doing this. So over the last few years, all these state and counties have had to roll that back and get used to the fact that this is what the state law is. So basically, with some nuance, you can build an ADU. There are exceptions, but even a R1 zone, like a low density zone, that would never be able to put a second unit on, this is an exception to that. So as long as you have room to do it, and as long as there isn't some extraordinary circumstance stopping you to do it, you can do it. That's the general rule. So that clarifies a lot. They run on the utilities of the main house, so you're automatically allowed to tie. It's meant to be tied in.
So you don't have to get a new water meter or electric or any of that stuff.
Now the thing that gets interesting is we have a lot of old inventory.
Right.
So the
you mean the existing homes?
The existing homes,
yeah.
and this is your life. You guys live this. I mean, you're putting a new product next to an old product. So the new product isn't restricted, but it may require some of that old product to be updated. So your existing home, they're not going to go through it from the building department and say, hey, you need sprinklers in here and you need this, that, and the other. They're not going to get that far, but the utility, the electrical service, those need to be sufficient to handle the additional load. So there may be some site impacts, but typically with the ADU, it's minimal. The fees are minimal. Yep. So this is a good one. Everyone should at least take a look at.
How many of your new builds today are including an ADU? A lot?
The majority of new homes we build have an ADU, or they have a master plan for an ADU. And so obviously, with the volume with the economy of scale, we'd like to put them in early, but at the same time, we're always setting people up for it, whether they're coming back 2-3 years later and putting it in, or whether the garage is oversized so that they can come in and do the ADU later on that footprint. Or something like that. I think everybody's building. What I love right now is people are building with a longer time horizon. I'm building this with intentionality for today, but what about 10 years from now? And so the ADU is a beautiful way to think about, how to factor, aging in place and all these different things. So it's a lot of fun.
Is that why my wife wants one? So there's a place to store me.
Well, I was helping a friend. We were designing ADUs and we were naming them. When we named one the failure to launch, that's for your kid who comes back. Yeah, exactly. We named another one for the in-law unit, keep her close but not too close. So we're having fun with all the different ways that this ADU thing factors into your life, and it's very real.
So when the first law passed was like 2019, or when they first put this over, and then there were some modifications locally, and then it didn't, and then then they passed again or something. So have the laws and the rules kind of stabilized, where it's not? Do you know what you're getting into, or there's still like jurisdictions in our county where it's like this city is a little bit trickier, or the county? How's that?
Yeah,
is that predictable, I guess.
Yeah, in classic fashion, a state law is passed that no one understands, and then everyone has to go work it out.
Okay.
And then they have to come back and bring clarifying, put things
Language.
clarifying on it. Yeah, language. And then all the cities and counties have to go, hey, how does this totally interferes with our local and regional ordinances? Now we have to start rolling those planning ordinances back or adjusting them. And so, like, for the longest time, even if you had room to put a secondary dwelling, this is pre-ADU, you had to be able to get additional parking on your lot. And to get additional parking, you had to have like a 12-foot, drivable lane in the city. So you had all these local things that stopped you. So those go out the window. And so the last 2-3 years has been every city and county figuring out how to mesh their local ordinance. And a lot of them would still like to impose restrictions, so they're looking for ways to impose it. And there are little fringy ways they can do that.
So that's why somebody would need to talk to you if they can do it.
Yeah, it's not an automatic. I mean, you might be in a planned subdivision where there's legal reasons you can't do it. You might be in an area where there are water impacts that would stop you from doing it. There are definitely reasons why you can't do it. You may not have the space. You still got to meet your setbacks. That's for fire safety between different structures and things like that. So there's definitely some impacts you got to consider.
And then, like, the general requirements, like limitations on size, that sort of thing. How do those general rules go for someone thinking about this?
We have a great team that handle this sort of thing, and I could have prepped a little bit. We've prepared a few one-pagers that anyone who's interested, we can hand out. The city has them as well. But 1,000 feet. The original law was 1,200, I believe, and then 1,000 kind of became the accepted. And a lot of the cities found ways to limit that down to 800. So I would say safely it's 800 to the 1,000, 1,200 mark.
Right.
As you move across the state, you'll find ranges of what you can actually do.
One of the kind of last questions. So somebody's thinking about building, or maybe even doing addition. Mm-hmm. These days, there's costs, there's labor issues, all these things we hear about. So what are the couple of the biggest challenges as a builder you face, which affects your clients?
If we meet, in a perfect world, we meet our client before we ever draw anything. And if we're working with someone before they even start drawing, we can mitigate almost every schedule impact. I mean, we have windows right now that are 6 months to get. We have doors that are 5 or 6 months to get. The good thing is we have eyes upstream, we call it. We can see these things happening. I know what's going on in one of our big aluminum producers out of Vacaville. We know what's going on in their plant. We know they've only got 2 lines open instead of 4. We know they're not going to get 3 back on. And we're monitoring all this upstream supply chain stuff. And so when someone comes in and we're involved before they draw, we're steering. Oh, you want a 25-foot bifold door? Okay, well, if we use this brand with this level of finish, we can get that in 3 months rather than 6. That kind of thing. So we can steer the fixture and finish around those hoops and hurdles. But when we come in late, maybe this is a better way to phrase it. Say someone has plans and a permit and they call us tomorrow. The first thing we do is start breaking the news to them of where the delays are going to be because the plan is we're coming in too late. So lead time on materials, a real problem. If you just go with what you want and you don't consider everything, you'll get some delays there. Labor is an issue. If I call up my framing crew, they're all 3 months out. Everyone's 3 months out, 6 months out. So you're going to end up with the B team, the C team, the D team, whatever you want to call them.
If you want to do it right
If you want to do it right now with no planning, you're not going to get the best people. You're not going to get the best price. So the way you mitigate it is with a really good long-range plan where you're factoring those things. So labor is a real issue. Yeah. We don't have enough skilled labor, and so you got to book people out early. Builders like us, who at least been around a decade, we've got relationships, and we have priority, and we're pulling on that hard to get things done right now. So I don't know how anyone getting into the game today would get it done.
Yeah. Sounds a little bit like what we do real estate. If somebody meets early, we can say, okay, well, don't worry about this. Let's focus on that. These things can save you time, money, and headaches. So
another big one is financing.
Yeah.
So what we do with our upfront budgeting when we're doing these feasibilities with the real estate team is we're going, hey, how much cash are you going to need to do this deal? Because you might spend $1 million, but you can't borrow $1 million. You got to spend so much cash before you get to a lendable state on the build. So we'll map out a cash flow plan. And if you map that out and you get your lender involved and they take 60, 90 days to put that together, that all has to be factored in so you can actually break ground when your permit's ready rather than sitting on it.
So be patient. If you're wanting to build a house, be patient. Take your time.
Be patient, but I always tell people you're going to spend a lot of money later, and the decisions that impact that are now. So get the team involved early. Don't be afraid to get them in early. You think you got to wait and do some bidding exercise? Don't do that. Bring them in early.
Have any more questions for Dan?
About 100, but I don't know. Yeah. So,
well, how can people contact you and give us some of your info in case somebody wants to get some information from you?
We have several different things going on in San Luis, but really anything related, you could just the easiest way is probably just go to FerreiraInc.com. It's spelled just like it sounds. It's super easy. It's FerreiraInc.com. And right there you'll see everything you need to know. I mean, we have a big thing that says, need help with a project. And you just, put your info in there and we'll come to the rescue.
Just start clicking. Well, awesome. Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it. Gentlemen, another successful podcast. I thank you all. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, James.
Thank you for listening to the Hal Sweasey podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. Check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on halsweasey.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. halsweasey.com, that's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the Hal Sweasey Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
San Luis Obispo Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey is also on YouTube. Now you can see people talk about real estate in one of California's hottest markets. Get the latest episode on the podcast page at teamsweasey.com or subscribe to Hal Sweasey on YouTube. Hal Sweasey is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 011119111. The SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.